Have a great moment, everyone. This is the logic module number 4, the critical mind handout. Again, we are in handout number 4. The title is Age and Maturity in Arguments. Well, when talk about maturity, you cannot really go away with psychology because maturity is a psychological term. However, earlier in the instructor's compass, we have learned that there is also a term called logical maturity. And most of the time, it refers to the developmental part and not the growth part. So, touching growth and development, what is the difference between growth and development? Well, when you say growth, it is a physical change. You can see this, you can expect this. You can really decipher this because it talks about length, height, width, color, and appearance. It can be measured quantitatively. When I say quantitatively, by numbers. Well, the indicators for this is height, as I have said earlier, weight, bone size, and dentition. Dentition means the growth of your teeth. Growth rates vary during different stages of growth and development. Now, there goes already the term called milestones. Okay? The growth rate is rapid during the prenatal, neonatal, and infancy stage, meaning the smaller the human is, the faster they grow. When they're already big, they grow slowly and they grow more developmentally already. So, growth is often physical and minimal. Okay, physical growth is really maximal during childhood and minimal during adulthood. So that is your growth side. Let us go now to development. In development, it is an increase in the complexity of function and skill progression. This time, it is not very much quantitative. It's qualitative because it's already the quality of your improvement in terms of skill and in terms of action. It is the capacity and skill of the person to adapt the environment. Adaptation is not a physical growth. It is something we cannot see, but it is happening. Development is the behavioral aspect of growth. Okay? So, growth can be physical and behavioral. Behavioral growth is development. Now, you can see the difference between growth and development. Growth is very physical, while developmental is very mental, very behavioral. Okay. Now, let us go further. The logic of growth and development. So we have tackled this already earlier. We have many theories surrounding growth and development. We have the Maslow's theory. We have Freud's theory. The most well-known among them is the Erik Eriksonian psychoanalytical theory. Now, applying growth and development with logical views this time, because growth and development is very much focused on psychology. However, it has a side that tackles logic. There is a possibility that argument is not reaching a good settlement if one does not understand the other due to the gap of the growth and development. So when you argue, first you have to know, growth-wise, physically, are you debating with a person of your same age, same physical capacity? Now, another question is, are you debating with a person with the same mental age or behavioral age that you have? That's another consideration. That's why, in the logical view, it's very important, especially in argumentation, that you should know the physical as well as the behavioral age of the one you're talking to. In short, you should know the growth and development status of the person you are conversing or you are actually implying logic with. A good observation, though, is not only in the age pattern, but there are people who are high in age but actually low in education. This is another thing because education in the Philippines is more of a privilege rather than actually a right. So most of the time, you're already very old, your education is very low. Most of the time, developmentally, you are behind even if your age is very high already. So these are some problems we are meeting in terms of conversational logic. Okay? So we cannot really depend that when your age is like this, you should talk like that. Why? Because education is developmental. Behavioral is developmental. Most of the time, it's in how you perceive things in the mind that usually dictates the kind of argumentative person that you are. So in logic, it's not very much of how old. It is often of how deep when you are considering a good argumentation. Now, common errors in argumentation. Well, I like this subtopic. By the way, I want you to refer to your handouts while we are talking about this module. The error of use of two technical statements. Now, when you are arguing, remember always that if you can be understood by a grade 2 student in your points that you drive, that is the most basic and most effective argumentation. Now, when you are arguing and the person, example, you are a doctor and the one you are arguing with is a lawyer, it's useless to use medical term because the lawyer will not understand that. Or in the contrary, if the lawyer will also use law terms, you as a doctor, you cannot understand that one. So there is really problem when the two persons talking will use technicality because most of the time they will not understand each other. The best thing to do is tone down to simplicity and then argue in the level wherein you can understand each other. And that is what we call as the level of simplicity, simple language. Okay? Next, the error of priorities in the growth and development level of each argumenting party. Now, as what I have said earlier, adolescents want to talk about love, adults about work, children about self. If not noticed, this will create conflict. So example, let's give a very peculiar example. Example, there is a person who is already 70 years old and he has a girlfriend who is 25 years old. Remember, the person who is 75 years old may always want to talk about future, about life, about retirement, while the 25 years old wanted to talk about sex, wanted to talk about dreams, wanted to talk about greatness of marriage. So there alone, you already have a conflict of interest between the argumentative topics that you have. So this is an error in argumentation. Most of the time, one has to give way. The adult, even if he wants to talk about retirement, should talk about love in its basic stage in order for an argument to come out good. Because you cannot also expect a young 25 years old to talk about retirement because she is not still there. Okay? Growth-wise, the age is only 25 years old. So you have to know when to apply topics, especially if the two persons arguing or talking to each other is not of the same growth level, age level, or physicality level. Now, how to be effective in arguments? Well, we will be providing some suggestions for you. Realize that the most effective arguments are given with just the right amount of emotional content. So remember, when you argue, we are not trying to say that you don't have to put emotion because argument without emotion is dead. But when you argue, just have the right emotions, pair it with logic, and then you will end up in a balance. If you are too emotional and less logical, you'll end up fighting for the emotion and not the truth. If you are too logical and you don't have an emotion, you will end up being a perfectionist. So you have to be effective by just leveling your logical and emotional content. Second, suspend your feelings. Remember, argumentation is about facts. Argumentation is about truth. It's not about what you believe or what you want. So right there and then, if you can already realize that you're fighting for what will come out good for you, you are not fighting well. You are not giving an argument in a correct manner. So let us always beware with this kind of errors that can go along our way. Next, choose your battles wisely. Now, it's not often that when a person wanted always to have an argument, they are very good logical people. Example, one person at the street will tell you, can we argue about cars that can fly and swim? Well, the problem is we don't use cars to fly and swim, we use cars on the road. So if you will submit to this kind of argument, it is in itself useless, and by consenting, you become useless yourself. I hope you get that point. Next here is, you argue only about things that you have sufficient knowledge about. If you are not well versed about politics, do not argue about politics. It's your freedom not to argue. Because if you argue on matters that you are not familiar, you will sound funny. Example, you are talking about politics and then you say, would you prefer pink or you prefer blue and green? Actually, the people asking you is very well versed in politics because pink is a color of one presidential, blue and green is another color of another presidential. Now here comes a person like you who is not very much interested, and you still wanted to argue, and you said, "Well, I want pink because it's more clean." So a pink color is good for the government because it's clean. So the person said, "Are you familiar? Are you voting for this?" And no, I'm not voting for that person. Now here goes the conflict. You look like a broken a broken drum. What we're trying to say is, listen to the person you're arguing with, because one way to become an effective argumentator is to answer the questions correctly, to answer it soundly. So if you're not listening and you're answering different things, it will come out that you are the lost tuned person. That's why God created us with two ears and one mouth, because we need to listen more and to speak less, especially during times when we are not needed to speak. Next, maintain a sense of composure and respect for the other person you are arguing with. Remember, you are arguing to settle. Remember, you are arguing to have a mental tussle. You are not arguing to end up injured or to end up physically fighting with each other. The first person to throw the punch in an argument of words is actually the person who lost control of himself. Remember always, arguments should stay as argument. They should not end up in a fight. Okay? Next, know when it's time to throw in the towel. If you are arguing and you have proved that the person arguing you is more correct and has proven to be more correct than you, accept the fact that you are wrong. That's the best way to end up in an argument. You argue to be a better person. You don't argue to fight for the wrong and to end up whatever it is may even be wrong or right. The strongest persons in this world are actually those who can accept that they lost to a better person and has the tendency to become better persons because of the lessons they learned from the loss. Remember that always. Use humor to make your points when necessary. So it's not wrong to have a light moment. It's not wrong to smile. It's not wrong to play some jokes as long as the jokes is not off tune. Remember, if you're always very serious, you may always look angry, even if you are not. So always remember, there is always a time to create that joke, especially if that joke can be used to strengthen your argumentation. So, at the end of the argumentation, I will just have three very important tips for you. Number one, be wary of the slippery slopes, which invokes that slippery slopes actually means the fallacies. We have learned already the fallacies in the past. Fallacies are errors that seem to be right because it is barred to become right to fool people. If you cannot spot the fallacies, if you cannot spot the barred errors, then you will lose the argumentation or you will end up arguing wrongly. Then, the best argument utilizes a mixture of logic and intuition in order to arrive at a sensible and respectable premise. Remember, you have to be logical. At the same time, you have to know or you have to predict intellectually. That is what we mean by intuition. What to do next. Do not raise your voice since you will escalate the argument very quickly. Remember, as what we have said earlier, argumentation is to learn and settle things. It is not to aggravate things. So the first person to raise the voice, the first person to raise the fist and have contact with others, they actually lost before actually losing entirely the debate. So remain in a word tussle and never imply physical force because that is not a very good thing for an argumentation. Now, before we end, let me have two special topics to share with you. The first is Confucian logic. Confucius is actually a Chinese philosopher, and one of the greatest logic that Confucius taught us is do unto others what you want others to do unto you. This is very fair. If others are doing good to you, do good to them. If others are doing bad to you, do them bad. So the simplicity of the Confucian logic sometimes is not very applicable to us because, example, if you are a doctor, okay, if you do bad to your patient, the patient will still follow you. But that does not mean that if you do bad to your patient, the patient will also do bad to you. Because during the time, the doctor may opt not to heal the patient. That is a very, very simple but tricky usage of the mind when it comes to the confusion logic. Sometimes when other people do something bad to us, the best way to let them feel bad is to do good to them. So remember always, as what my mother said before, if somebody is teasing you, do not mind them or smile at them because it's just putting burning charcoals over their head. If they cannot satisfy the teasing that they give on you because you are not affected, it will hurt them more than their hope of hurting you. So that is the Confucian logic in a simple sense. Doing unto others what you want others done unto you, it can have a little twist because you do it to them, not exactly how they did it to you, but the effect is more than how they did it to you because you let them feel remorse and guilty with what you did to them. A good example is if they do bad to you, do good because it will create guilt in them. Why did I do something bad to this person who is doing good to me? Now goes the slight side of the Confucian logic. Now, the last topic here is prioritization standards of critical thinking. Well, this is just an emulation of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So, when you are actually creating an argument, always remember the priority is always physical needs, physiological needs, then safety and security, then love and belongingness, then self-esteem and self-actualization. Well, self-actualization might always be the end, but when a person argues and he goes beyond these four, he is considered as the best logical argumentator of all times. Remember, a self-aware person is a person who can understand others more than himself, who can understand the situation more than what he wanted to do with it. So if you understand others and you understand the situation, there's a very small tendency that you will create a mistake of fighting against something that will not benefit you. Remember always, not all people can reach self-awareness state. Some people will die and they remain in self-esteem because they are still proud, they are still ambitious, they still wanted to defeat others. They do not have the contentment in life. But a person who goes beyond self-awareness, self-esteem, and becomes self-aware will someday become humble because they are happy where they are. So that is a very simple way of trying to come up with the prioritization of standards of critical thinking and telling you that self-awareness is the highest form of critical thinking condition. Okay? So I hope and pray that after maximizing our time in studying this module, you will know the conclusion is logical maturity is different from growth maturity. Logical maturity is a maturity that lets others know what kind of mind, what kind of behavior, what kind of person you are in and out. So may it be that the logical maturity that we are showing the public is also in the right age, right growth level that we are in now. If you are a college student, be logical like a college student because it's not nice to see that you're a college student and your logic is that of a grade 3 student. That's delayed. It would be better yet if you're a college student but you see life logically as an adult person. That is now what we call as a logical maturity leading to genius probability. God bless everyone. Thank you very much for listening to our discussion about logical maturity. Again, this is still your Critical Mind Handouts number 4, Age and Maturity in Arguments. This is still Academia Gonzaga, and this is Mentor Noy, hoping to see you again in the next lessons, in the next handouts, in the next things that we will learn about logic and any other things under the sun. Have a great day, learners.